Fascinatingly, while we have been very, very busy with the deputy president versus the handshake political war, things have been happening in Parliament. Very significant, game-changing developments have been unfolding in Parliament. In my view, the politics has shifted so drastically, that Kenya is a different country. In my view, this is something good. In my view, this was the whole intention, of those who constructed our new constitution. You know, Kenyans can't stop talking about an opposition. You hear people saying the opposition is dead. You hear people saying we need an opposition, which is very strange because our current constitution does not have room for an opposition. We have an executive that is independent. We have a legislature that is supposed to be independent. And we have a judiciary that must be independent. Those three arms of government are checks and balances against each other. So that the legislature, parliament, checks and neutralizes any executive excesses. And of course the executive and the judiciary effectively tame parliament. Now there's one headline recently that just floored me. And anybody who understands Kenya would have had the same reaction. And this was the headline: Kenya MPs rejects funding for Somali wall. For those who don't know, this was a pet project of the executive, very close to the heart of the executive. Now you read a story under that headline that I've just mentioned, and you realize that this rejection by Parliament cut right across the political divide. It was bipartisan. You had on one side Aden Duale leading the attack. Yes, Aden Duale of Jubilee, the previously obedient errand boy of State House. Yes, that one. And then you have him very closely being supported by John Mbandi, who is an ODM firebrand legislator. Excellent. This is the way it was supposed to work, right from 2010, or rather from 2013. And had it worked like this, there would never have been a damn scandal. It would never have worked. How? Had it worked like this, Kenya would be a very different country today. Anyway, as they say, better late than never. Now, the headline I've just mentioned is not an isolated incident. There have been many other incidences where Parliament has flexed its muscles, and shown us that it's independent and it's actually finally doing its work. Let me give you just one more example. Parliament have cornered the Central Bank of Kenya Governor, Bwana Patrick Njoroge. It is now clear that another tactic of the executive in the past, of frustrating laws that were passed, was just to ignore those laws. The laws are not gazetted. Those who implement them don't implement them. So Parliament has passed a law, but it's useless. It's not implemented. And therefore, it's just like the law is not there. And a perfect example is what has been happening at the Treasury. In 2018, Parliament passed the Finance Act. And the long and short of what this act was supposed to do, it was supposed to ease the very strict banking regulations that have been enforced in the country, allegedly to deal with terrorism and money laundering. MPs were very infuriated because what has happened in Kenya is that people have resorted to pillow banking. You put your money under the pillow, or hide it under the mattress, or you stash it in safes inside your house. Why? Because these days, to collect a mere 1 million of your money from your bank is a major issue. To bank a mere 1 million Kenya shillings, that's only $10,000, in your bank account has become a very major event. You have to fill in forms. You have to explain where the money is coming from, who the beneficiaries are, etc., etc. So that even an ordinary Kenyan somewhere in Garissa, trying to sell some camels, a few of his camels, cannot bank that money in his account. Again, these suffocating regulations are a pet project of the executive. You can imagine the executive seated with his security advisors, and they make decisions, without looking at the other side of the coin, without considering the implications on the economy, and our financial system. And the Central Bank of Kenya governor recently made it very clear what their thinking was. He told Parliament that there are very, very few Kenyans with more than 1 million shillings in their account. Now, this is an argument that does not hold water. It doesn't make any sense. Having 1 million, not having 1 million in your account, or having 1 million in your account means nothing. Because any prudent business person would not leave money lying around in the account. The money is being transacted. The money is moving. It is very possible and very normal to be transacting in tens of millions of Kenya shillings and the account has nothing. Or to have several transactions, none of which reach 1 million, going through your account all the time. And then finally, you're supposed to receive this payment of 2 million and you're stuck. You can't bank it. Why? Because of regulations. They'll ask too many questions. You're not doing anything illegal, but the time you'll need to spend banking a mere 2 million, you can't afford that time. You're chasing for business. You're chasing through what you're doing. You don't have time to waste. Least of all, filling forms and in long meetings with your bank just to bank 2 million, $20,000. And so the legislators tried to correct this situation, and they passed the 2018 Finance Act, but it was never implemented. And when they called Njoroge to explain, he told them there was no way he was going to implement that law because it would put the country into trouble, even with the international community, which is very keen to deal with money laundering. The legislators were livid. They told Bwana Njoroge, "You mean you're the one who decides laws in this country?" They accused the governor of using circulars and memos to regulate banking in the country, which even if you're not a lawyer, you will know is completely illegal. Fascinatingly, at first Bwana Patrick Njoroge stood up to the legislators, but finally, recently, he has cowed, he has changed his position, and he has promised the MPs that he will implement. But the MPs are not taking anything lying down because they have still summoned him to appear before them in about 2 weeks' time. And Njoroge has promised he'll implement the law, as it has been passed by the House, within that time. Now, the next time Bwana Njoroge will appear before the House, the timing is extremely interesting because he has a 4-year term and he came into office in 2015, which means in March this year, this month, his tenure will come up for renewal. And members of parliament have said they're going to block the renewal of his contract. Now, incidentally, there's something very interesting here. The governor of the central bank, Patrick Njoroge, is a bachelor. Yes, he's not married. And this issue actually came up, when he was being vetted by parliament. But of course, at the time, the executive was controlling the legislature. So there was no problem. They complained, but in the end, it was not an issue. So my question is it very important for an important public servant to be married? Is it important for a leader to be married, the president of a country? Or is it inconsequential? Well, I shall deal with that towards the tail end of this video, and you don't want to miss it. It's a very interesting discussion. But first, let us look at something super fascinating. The presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta can be divided into 3. Between 2013 and 2016, when the power behind the throne was Deputy President William Samoei Ruto. And then between 2016 and the handshake in March 2018, when the power behind the throne was, in my view, a reckless bully. Yeah, and then of course we have the presidency after the handshake, which is the kind of presidency to be admired. A presidency fully in control without having to bully anybody. A presidency which is very effective without having to control parliament. Yeah, and we shall dissect that immediately after the brief upcoming commercial break. I assure you, you don't miss this one. Welcome back. Now, supporters of Deputy President William Samoei Ruto are not going to like this, but this is the truth and nothing but the truth. It is now very clear to most analysts that DP William Ruto was very influential within the executive between 2013 and 2016. And more importantly, it is also very clear, crystal clear, that the type of president Deputy President William Ruto would be tomorrow and future is the kind of presidency we saw between 2013 and 2016. Most people agree with that. What kind of presidency was that? Very interesting. This is the kind of presidency that would remind an old analyst of the presidency of Daniel Toroitich arap Moi. And indeed, Ruto is a student of Moi and the Kanu days. This is the kind of presidency that is a paranoid leadership that must micromanage everything and be in full control of everything, and especially the legislature. And more importantly, this was achieved using Moi tactics during multi-party era, during the multi-party era from 1992, where the presidency is in full control and does things chini ya maji, behind the scenes. So that if you're naive, you do not believe that the president has his hand in virtually everything in the country. Now in 2016, things changed dramatically. In my view, the government became more draconian. In reality, this is exactly what happened. The government was still operating the way it had been since 2013. Things were still being done in the same way. Decisions were still being made in precisely the same way. The huge difference is that the public relations and the smokescreen was missing. Public relations at the highest level, the smokescreen being organized and manipulated from the highest level was missing. That, of course, was the deputy president. The government was still the same face, only that this time makeup was missing. So it was possible for everybody to see the ugly wrinkles, etc., etc. Now, in my view, the most fascinating part of the Uhuru Kenyatta presidency is the current period, which started after the handshake on March 9th, 2018. I find it very interesting that the presidency now is very effective. Much more effective than the Kifua presidency we had before. Now, I can already hear somebody asking me, how can you say the presidency is effective when you have just told us that Parliament seems to be bullying the presidency, rejecting pet projects of the executive? Very good question, and I'll answer you. The 2010 Constitution gave the executive enough power. Some felt it was too much. But there was a reason why the executive was given so much power. It was so that the executive would be able to be in a position to have clout to negotiate with Parliament. And this is the way it works. Parliament rejects something that the president once passed through. The executive simply relaxes, and Parliament continues flexing their muscles, and it looks like they're in charge. However, the truth is, sooner or later, you will need something from the government. And so, a few weeks later, you find that you need something from the government. Yeah, maybe you want something done in your constituency. Yeah, and you can't do it without the support of government. So you go to the executive and you say, Your Excellency, I need this and that and that and that. So the executive smiles back at you and tells you, that's not a problem. That is very easy to organize. However, I also have this issue that I need sorted out. Can you help? I think you get my drift. Now, we do not have enough time for me to go into specific examples, many of which will confuse you, because they're still on the conveyor belt. Things are still happening behind the scenes. But let me give you an example outside government. You have an MP in Malindi called Aisha Jumwa. She continues to insult the party that actually sponsored her into Parliament. And the party leader, Raila Odinga, remains very cool, despite the fact that this is betrayal, the worst kind of betrayal you can think, when you look at the history of Raila Odinga and Aisha Jumwa. But Raila Odinga doesn't say a single word, doesn't issue any statement on concerning Aisha Jumwa. Then somewhere down the road, the ODM party expels Aisha Jumwa from the party, which has far-reaching consequences. Because, for instance, it means that she has to go back to the electorate by election and seek fresh mandate, either as an independent or as a member of another party. And so Aisha Jumwa appeals directly to Raila. And so Raila smiles and says, it's no problem. But I need you to do 1, 2, 3. I need you to apologize. I need you to leave the deputy president's camp. Now, ordinarily, this issue would have ended very amicably. I can tell you that from the information I have. However, somebody is lying to Aisha Jumwa. And so the latest is that she has said she will not apologize. Now, let us leave that story there and come back to what we're discussing. Now, I deliberately chose the Raila Odinga example because, in my view, the real power behind this current phase of the Uhuru Kenyatta Presidency is Raila Odinga, a very experienced politician, maybe the most experienced and crafty politician we have in Kenya at the moment. He leaves emotions completely out of his politics, and he knows exactly when to push, exactly what time to pull, and precisely when it is best to just sit back and do nothing and wait. That, my friends, is the Uhuru Kenyatta Presidency now. Mark my words, the wall, the Somali wall, is going to be built, and Parliament are going to approve financing for it. But not before, somebody is going to be prosecuted for corruption in connection to that wall. Very quickly, let me give you some figures. Initially, the Kenya Defense Forces had estimated that the wall actually is not even a wall, because it consists of barbed wire, razor wire, chain links, and concrete posts. And it is very high tech. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't have told you that. Anyway, somebody somewhere insisted on using the word wall. Why? So that when costs start escalating, very few questions would be asked. Because the initial Kenya Defense Forces quotation, estimate of what the entire wall would cost, the entire 700 kilometers, was 8 billion. However, Parliament are now asking why only a small section of the wall, only a 10-kilometer stretch, 10 kilometers of 700 kilometers. That 10-kilometer stretch costs the government 3.4 billion. Parliament asking why. Of course, you know 3.4 billion is almost half of 8 billion. So if 10 kilometers has already taken half, almost half, the entire budget, the entire initial estimate, you can guess how much the wall will cost in the end. And so definitely, there was some corruption there. And so after the culprits have been dealt with, this wall will continue. And it will be done within budget. Mark my words. And Parliament will approve it. Now we'll go for a brief commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why Bwana Patrick Njoroge is not married. And if it is important for a public figure to be married. Don't miss that. Welcome back. Now, the world over, any politician who wants to vie for office must be married. In mature democracies, the handlers of any presidential candidate, for instance, will normally go into great trouble, to portray a happy marriage. And with good reason. It is very dangerous for somebody who is not married to be in a position of responsibility, especially in public office. And let me tell you why by giving an example that is slightly out of politics. I happen to know very many individuals who have built big fortunes, been very successful in business, handles millions and some of them billions of Kenya shillings, but then they have ended up being bankrupt. They have ended up sinking. The empires have come crashing down. And the main reason, because I know these people quite well and their background quite well, and some of them have done quite a bit of research, the reason why their empires came crumbling down was a woman. A woman who was not their wife. Fascinatingly, all these people I'm talking about were married. They had wives. But as their empires grew, as they made more money, their wives started being less important. They went out of their marriages to look for younger, more beautiful women. That is a recipe for disaster. And if you still don't believe me, look at the story of Samson in the Bible, Samson and Delilah. Samson was the strongest man who ever lived, a mighty servant of God, but he was brought to his knees, completely destroyed by a woman. Now the problem with men, especially as they approach midlife and after, is that they want a woman besides them who will tell them what they want to hear, and of course in the process swindle them, or in the process mislead them. Although most men believe they are too smart to be outsmarted by a woman, and that's the crux of the problem. Because let me tell you a secret today. God created a man and gave a man his strength. That strength is in the muscles, and some of it is in the brain, the way a man thinks. And then God created a woman and gave a woman her strength. That strength is not in her muscles. It's not. You know, I've been a student of life, a student of the human being and human nature all my life. It is something that greatly interests me. And I can spend hours of research, on this particular topic because it fascinates me. And I also look for practical examples. I have seen with my own eyes very powerful men, very strict men, lions, if you like, who have met a woman and that woman has done things to that man. And the man has turned into a domestic cat, for real. Now, if the woman who has done this to you is your wife, there's no problem. There's absolutely no problem. Because your interests are aligned. It is a blood covenant. And you even have children who carry the man's blood and the woman's blood to confirm that blood covenant. And in this kind of arrangement, you will prosper. If you have a huge fortune, it will be fully protected. But try and put your wife in the back burner, shove her aside, and then bring into prominence your mistress. And your end will be very predictable. You're going to be finished. Now, let's go back to our main topic. You're in public office and you're not married. That is even worse. Because in all likelihood, you will have a few women in your life. And even if it is one woman, she's not your wife. She's your mistress. There is no legal binding between the two of you. So anything can happen. And women have a very effective way of making sure they get what they want. And so you're a naive man there. You think you're getting what you want. But in actual fact, somebody else is getting much more. And they're getting exactly what they want at your expense. I don't want to state the obvious, so let me just give you one more example before I go to cement my point. The way women were wired by Almighty God is that they were wired to have sex only with one man. So they have sex with that one man who is their husband, and they go crazy for that man, and they remain loyal to that man. Now we live in a modern world where the manufacturer's handbook, the person who created us and wired us, in the way we behave, that manufacturer's handbook is irrelevant to most people. And so everything is going perfectly well in this marriage. And so the man decides he'll go outside the marriage and he has an affair. Nothing much happens. He retains his marriage. He retains his home. He manages to find a new kind of relationship with his wife. And things continue as normal. And the couple forgets that women were wired to be jealous. Very jealous. More jealous than men. So this nice faithful wife, who knows her husband is playing around, one day a man smiles at her. And one thing leads to another. And this faithful wife has sex with this man who is not her husband. And that sex makes this woman go crazy. Because it is better sex than the sex she has ever had with her own husband. And since women were wired right from the beginning, to obey instructions, and to be loyal to the man who has sex with them, and the kind of sex that makes them go crazy, what happens? This loyal wife changes her loyalties, and maybe she doesn't even know it. And by bad luck, this other man in her life had other motives right from the beginning. And the motives were to do with the husband. They were to do with finishing the business empire of her husband. So what do you think is going to happen? We see these stories in the newspapers every day. A wife organizes for the murder of her husband. That wife is not bad. That wife is not evil. In my view, she's just normal. The circumstances were just created in her life, that were able to make some certain wires active. And that was the end. Now I'm fully aware of the fact that most of you will not listen to me. Most of you will say, "Ai, Chris, umemaliza siasa. Unaongea nini leo?" I know that there are even some of you who will say, Chris, today you're talking rubbish. And that's okay. But for those who are wise, I just have one small piece of advice. Everything in the manufacturer's handbook cannot be ignored. Is key, is important, is so important that it's a matter of life and death. Everything in the manufacturer's handbook. Why? Because it is the blueprint of how us human beings were created and how we were wired. And more relevant to what we're discussing here, exactly how a man and a woman were wired in a relationship. And I'm afraid not even the most advanced technology can change that. So having given you that long background, one thing should be very clear. It is not possible for a man who is not married to hold an important key public office, like the presidency, or shall I say, especially the presidency or the leader of a country. For the sake of that country, that president must have a very stable marriage. In my view, it is a very dangerous national security issue if that president has a mistress. And the same is true for any other person in an important position of leadership in public office. The only difference is that the effect, the negative effect in a small office like Member of Parliament will not be as serious as in a big office as President of the country. Or Chief Justice. You can add the other offices you think are important. Let me not do that. Just add them for yourself. Never elect somebody who is not in a stable marriage. That is a recipe for suicide. And if you're a president, never appoint somebody to a very key, critical position who is not in a stable marriage. That's my view. Until next time, this is Chris Komekucha.